Okay. Looks like we're going live here. We had a little issue. The internet went out, but then it came on. Then it went out. Then it came on. So right now we're live. So hello, welcome to the Joke Your Way Through Life Joke Writing Challenge. My name is Jerry Corley, aka the Joke Doctor, standupcomedyclinic.com. So glad that you're here, those of you who are participating. I am going to be opening up the comments here just so I can keep track of you guys. Great to see you. Amir is here. We got Just Jay. 111 degrees outside, but my basement is cool. Where are you, Jay? 111. That's cool. Was that Arizona, Las Vegas? No, it's Kansas. Amir is here. Bob Kirk is here. Hey, Bob. Pumpkin is here. Pumpkin. Is that Pumpkling? Pumpkling. Wow, I gotta get my glasses. Mark Berryman is here. Say hello to everybody, guys. And remember, anytime you're in a situation like this, whether it's a competition, a comedy festival, an open mic, try to exchange socials, get to know one another, network with as many people as you can, build relationships, because everything in this business gets done through a relationship. Many of you who are doing the mics now, doing some spots, know that you get spots from other comedians who begin to know you or get to know you. If you've developed sort of a theme or a style, like I was a clean, socio-political comedian, still am. And when people say, hey, we need somebody who does politics, they'd know they could come to me. So you build those relationships, you get more gigs that way. Steve Hansen is here. Hi, Steve. Says hello. Sam's here. Kevin's here. SE is here. It's like the comedy hour. A nice hour. Like it's almost French from Wisconsin. Don't you know? Rodney Owen is here from Australia. Good to see you, Rodney. Cameron Linderman is here. Mal the Master Barber. Look at lots of people joining. This is so awesome. Isn't this cool? This is a cool thing. I got to do more of these. These are so much fun. And the submissions, we got more submissions than we did last time. So we're going to be blazing through these submissions. I'm going to try to only keep it, some of the, in putting this all together, some of you submitted many more than 3 jokes. I'm going to try to just stick to 3 per card as I slide through the presentation, just so we have enough time for everybody. Derek Tennant is here. Jerry Lahane is here. We see a lot of people. We got Gianluca. Is that's I was going to say Italy, and it says from Italy. Hey, Gianluca, great to see you here. Michael Kelly Harris, that sounds Italian as well. So Daphne Steinberg is here. Rico's here. We got lots of just so many people. Scott Fowler from Australia is here. There was a couple of people that submitted 20 jokes. Some people submitted 23 jokes. A couple of people, I think I made a notation on the cards. But again, I'm going to stick to 3. Some people wrote a mini script, which I thought was interesting. Not a bad choice considering Jimmy Kimmel Live. He does a through monologue. And Stephen Colbert does as well, where Fallon does 1 and 2 liners, and Bill Maher still does 1 and 2 liners. John Oliver does kind of a script. Seth Meyers does a little combination of both because he does a closer look on his show. But this is mostly sort of writing for kind of late night current events jokes. Some of you wrote in your own voices, which is fine, because I didn't specifically say write for a host, right? So you're just expressing yourself in your style, and I'll try to give some notes on some of those ideas as well. We got Chetofini. What a cool name. Chetofini's a young comic from Atlanta. That's cool, and this is so good. We got in the middle of Breaking Comedy DNA. I have my first open mic this coming Tuesday. Good to hear. I hope the book is helping you out. So Joel Byers is also in Atlanta. That's right. Joel Byers, and I think that's spelled Bayers or Byers. It's Bayar, I believe. So Joel does, by the way, does a cool thing at the Hot Breath Comedy Network. Joel and I met at the World Series of Comedy a few years ago. I did a podcast over there with him, had a great time, and he loves comedy as much as I do, and he does a cool thing called the Right 10 Club. Go check that out on Facebook, because you want to stay accountable and be able to do something every day. That Right 10 Club is really right down your alley. We're going to stay on as long as possible if my internet still stays on. If we bump off, I'll try to sign right back on, but hopefully it'll stay on. We're not storming here yet. I don't know why. It's Spectrum. That's why. That's why it'll drop off. But we'll try to stay on. If it, I picture like doing this and it's like storming, the house gets blown away, and I'm still sitting here with the rain pouring on me doing jokes, because that's what I do. That's what I would love to do. So yeah, the Hot Breath Network is cool. That's one way to get together and build a community of comedians, and it's they're all like-minded. So Joel has such a nice program where most of the comics involved in Hot Breath Network are all helpful to one another. You don't get that sort of like animosity you do in some of the open mic scenes. And keep in mind, guys, when you do sort of get that, it feels like you're getting animosity from other comics. For the most part, that's insecurity. Comics are some of the most insecure people out there. We're loners, right? We're like rogue. And so we got somebody else who's trying to encroach on our stage time or whatever. We can feel that real, sort of like, the guy gets a laugh and I don't. We feel that really personally. So a lot of times when it starts, you have to build sort of like a camaraderie over a period of time. You'll see comics, you go to open mics, they have their cliques. Don't take that personally. Just keep going. And if you show up with good jokes, here's a hint. If you want to get respect at those mics, write really good reverses. If you can write a really good reverse, then you'll get respect, because that's one of the toughest jokes to write well. That's sort of like, if you reverses like Anthony Jeselnik style jokes. Like one of the best reverses one of my students wrote was this one. His name's Will Hamilton. He said, just got a call from the school today telling me my son was being bullied, and I got to tell you, that is the single worst way to find out you're a dad. So you see how clear and concise that switch, that left turn was, and it's like it came as a nice big surprise. You do 3 of those in your opening at an open mic, trust me, you're going to get respect from those comics, because that's a hard joke form to write well. And so if you really work hard on your reverses, and sort of study Jeselnik, and then get that inspiration, that style, and write those reverses, I think you'll wind up getting more respect at those open mics. So let's get this started. It's the FEMA weather precast money drop. I'm dying to know what that is. It sounds fun. Good. Let's see. Denise is a Hot Breath mod. Good. Moderator over in Hot Breath. Good. And Jerry Lehane, Biden keeps coming back. We can't get rid of him. Right? Isn't that true? Seattle's here. Chris Zapata is here. Good to see you, Chris. All right. Let's get started. Oh, so in like, hit me up. I've got a sheet that I can share with you. Hit me up by email. And then I got a sheet I can share with you guys on reverses. I also teach reverses on the a la carte courses I do every Monday. In that section, I do a good program on reverses. I have a couple of different episodes on that, because there are several different ways to learn to write a reverse and approach a reverse. And a lot of times here, I'll give you a quick tip. Start with your ending first. Know where you're going. Like, for example, I'm going to change the setting, or I'm going to change the gender. So perception is everything. It's all visual, right? So one of the easiest things to do is act like it's a female or a male, and then switch it at the end to a female or a male. Like, for example, I went to the gym. You ever do this? I said, got off this machine, and somebody got on right after me, raised the weight about 75 pounds, knocked out 10 reps like it was nothing. Normally that doesn't bother me, but that chick was pregnant. You see what I'm saying? It's like you build up. I knew in a goal that I was going to write a joke that implied it was male. That implied the person I'm dealing with was male, and at the end I switched it. So you find out what males do, and you build up. You write the joke without revealing a gender, and then you flip it at the last second. So gender or person and setting. Change that. You can always change the setting. So if you write something that implies we're at a certain setting, and then you could change that setting at the last second, and that can also be a good way to do it. And there's also concept reverses. For example, there was a joke I did about when the real estate in Southern California was exploding. What was happening was people were outbidding each other after the first offer went in. And so houses, it wasn't uncommon for houses to raise $100,000, $200,000 in 2 weeks because people were outbidding each other. And it got to the point where it was so lucrative that realtors were being very aggressive with trying to get you to sign with them to list your home. So I had this realtor knocking on my door. She's a 40-something female, kind of sexy-looking lady. And she goes, and then finally she comes by. She goes, Jerry, it's Lisa. I'm desperate. I will do anything if you list your house with me. And it's like, you'll do anything? And it's like, this house, you'll do anything. She goes, I swear to God, I'll have sex with you if you list with me. And so I was like, you got it. We had sex. And right before I signed on the dotted line, and I said, there's something you should know about this house, Lisa. And she goes, what, it's haunted? I said, no, I rent it. So right there is a concept reverse. I knew where I was going with that. I was implying that I owned it, but instead I said I rent it, never said I owned it, a house I live in. So that's kind of a way to do it too. Know where you're going first and then write it backwards. Okay, let's get started. We're going to, I'm gonna go to a screen share here, and we're gonna take a look, presentation. We're gonna look at the jokes, and I'll go through them. Like I said, I'm gonna try to do this by, I try to keep it to 3 jokes per. Here we go. We're gonna share this page and change that to a presentation view so it's full page so you can read it. And let me see here if I can keep track. I can't keep track of the comments this way. Let me see what's a better way for me to do this. Second screen, possibly. Just bear with me a second. There, we'll do it this way. I don't know if you guys can see that full screen. If you can, let me know if you see if you could read it just fine. That's good. If you're struggling with it, let me know. Let's see if I can go through this. Let me go over to the slides. I'll pop back. Chipotle is testing a robot that can make guacamole half the time as a human employee. I'm sorry, my parents taught me to work hard. That's not quite a reverse because there needs to be an assumption, right? What are we expecting? There needs to be an expectation. We need to be leaning into something. You know, it's like there needs to be like we're already filling in the blank there. And it's like I don't see that happening yet. Okay, so good. You guys can see that? Good. I'm going to get on this side and I'm going to walk through these together with you. All right, so Chipotle, this is from Tim Kraft. Chipotle is testing a robot that can make guacamole in half the time as a human employee. Chipotle accountants brag that by cutting their entire payroll in half, they'll save nearly $100 a year. Funny. See, this was a good reverse, right? Because he created an expectation they'll save nearly, and we're thinking it's going to be a big number, and he comes up with $100 a year. Apparently, Chipotle is testing a robot that can make guacamole in half the time as a human employee. Apparently, the guacamole also lasts half the time. So now you can conveniently throw your guac away before you leave the drive-thru. Funny joke, makes sense. I think we've all experienced guacamole turning gray or dark, and it's like, and it doesn't look appetizing anymore. So, and that happening in the drive-thru is funny. Chipotle is testing a robot that can make guacamole in half the time as a human employee. They're calling this fascinating new invention a blender. Amazing. What's next? Lanterns that run on electricity? Nice work, Tim. Good joke. All right, so using exaggeration and sarcasm to pay that off at the end. Now, keep in mind, you'll notice that I repeat that headline. There's a reason for this. It's because the brain can only keep track of 2 to 3 ideas or 3 to 4 ideas at the same time. So the moment I introduce something that has a visual or an image, the brain stops connecting to the headline. If you guys remember the top 10 list with David Letterman, he would always repeat that setup. He wouldn't go more than 2 punchlines without repeating the setup because the brain's got to still keep track. when you're pitching a joke in a writer's room, and it's always the best idea to restate the setting, restate the setup. Even though they're like, okay, we know what the setup is. That's just not how the brain works. Odds are you'll get more jokes greenlit if you repeat the headline or repeat the setup. Chipotle is testing a robot that can make guacamole in half the time as a human employee. This is what happens when they could see over half their employees, see over half of their employees doing TikTok challenges in the kitchen. And a lot of people came up with TikTok jokes on this, which is interesting. That's what must be what people are doing in the workplace. Chipotle is testing a robot that can make guacamole in half the time as a human employee. That's funny because Chipotle's values state, we believe that food has the power to change the world. We do it by being real. That's a funny, sarcastic line. It would sort of just sit there for a second because it would take time to configure. First of all, we need to know Chipotle's values. If I was doing this at late night, I would put those values up on the screen and show it was Chipotle's value statement, right? Because I know Chipotle has these value statements, these branding statements that they use, talking about honest and good and all that. We believe that food has the power to change the world. We do it by being real. Introducing our robot. It's just those people. It's almost like getting calling a company and getting that voice greeting. It says your call is important to us. Please stay on the line. It's like if my call was important to you, somebody would answer the damn phone. But it's so you see what it's, you maybe tie in an analogy right there to that, but I like that concept. Chipotle is testing a robot that can make guacamole in half the time as a human employee, but after $25 million federal fine because the employees are nasty and E. coli was found in the food making people sick across the U.S., now we are real robotic. I see what you're doing there. It's not the clarity is not as clear as it should be, but I see what you're saying. Same great items, but more clean and authentic taste. Nice, Monica. Not bad at all. What I would do is like sometimes ask yourself in the joke, what am I trying to say in this joke? And then just say it. So one of my tendencies as a writer is to be too clever. That's what I do. I wind up being too clever. And I overwrite the joke. And sometimes I'll have to really go back and say, what am I trying to say in this joke? Oh, there it is. Just say it. And then I just say it. And then the joke pops. So in this case, there's something going on in your head that I think is not being shared with us. So get down and try to, it's like, what's that simple answer? And remember, when you're writing both for live stand-up yourself and for a late night show, the material's moving. Right, the only thing time just keeps flowing. So if the audience doesn't know exactly what's being said, they get lost fast. So it's good to make sure you nail it with some of the best jokes to the simplest jokes, and especially for in TV when you're talking to middle America. So let's move on. Good work there. Chipotle is testing a robot that can make guacamole in half the time as a human employee because it doesn't pee every 15 minutes. This is a great sarcasm joke. See how simple that was? Human beings have to pee every 15 minutes, right? Or do pee breaks all the time. So that when I first saw that, it made me laugh because, I knew somebody at work who would always like, what, another? You got to pee again? It's like, but, you leave it alone. It's like, but the human employee, let's see, so that I like that joke. Chipotle is testing a robot that can make guacamole in half the time as a human employee. But the human employee makes it better. But the human employee it makes is better looking than the guacamole. It's worth the wait. I loved this, Deborah, because you did what's called simple truth. And within this headline is a secondary meaning of what the headline says, which is, and several of you caught this, which I thought was awesome. Chipotle is testing a robot that can make guacamole in half the time as a human employee, saying that the robot is making guacamole and human employees, but it can make guacamole in half the time that it makes a human employee. So you just took it and said and saw that simple truth in there. It's almost like doing the exercise every 12 and a half seconds. Some woman in the U.S. is getting pregnant. Somebody should find her and stop her, right? So it's like some woman could be a random woman is getting, women are getting pregnant and one woman at a time getting pregnant every 12 seconds. But the way the fact is written, it sounds like one woman, that same woman. So You noticed that. And it was the first one that came up that I saw in the list of jokes that nailed that. I was like, all right, they're paying attention. Good work. Chipotle is testing a robot that can make guacamole in half the time as a human employee. Well, I sure hope this way it will arrive at the customer before the green turns to black. Finally, the avocado will stay green before reaching the table. Okay, so I see what's happening with Tovit. You got two different lines here, which you defined with that double hash here. So like Chipotle is testing a robot that can make guacamole in half the time as a human employee. Finally, the avocado will stay green before reaching the table. Boom, joke works, right? Nicely done. Now, one of the things we do is when we're writing for late night TV is sometimes we can write 10 to 20 jokes on one headline. And here's the key. When you're pitching in the room, you want to pitch your best three. It depends on the head writer, of course, but sometimes you pitch your best one. And now selecting the one that you're going to keep in there is where it sometimes gets complicated. Know which ones are the best by saying it out loud. I like that. Finally, the avocado will stay green before reaching the table. So because it makes it in half the time, that really ties in well. Chipotle is testing a robot that can make guacamole in half the time as a human employee. That's nice, but by the time the burrito is ready, the avocado turns black. That's a good joke too, right? By the time the burrito is ready, they're calling it Chip GPT. Chipotle, guacamole per table versus Chet. I like that idea. So if you just said Chipotle is testing a robot that can make guacamole in half the time as a human employee, they're calling it Chip GPT, right? So Chip could be chip as in Chipotle or chip as in chips and salsa, right? So tortilla chip. So good work, Toby. Chipotle is testing a robot that can make guacamole in half the time as a human employee. Actually, robot is just a nickname the coworkers gave her. Her real name is Maria. She's a 26-year-old mother of three from Guatemala. The secret to her speed? She doesn't own a cell phone. I liked this joke. Now, this joke would have played well like in 1980 and early 1990. Right now, especially if you're a white guy, Gary, doing a joke and maybe mentioning somebody of color, the audiences pull back, right? And certainly in late night, we like to avoid that sort of like pullback. We don't want anybody to think, even perceive that the joke is racist, because people automatically leap to that these days. So, but I know what you're saying here, and I know it was innocent. You're saying she's a hard worker, but audiences don't get that. They don't see that, So let's. Chipotle is testing a robot. Just be careful with that stuff. Just because audiences are so super sensitive these days. If you're doing stand up, sometimes I say fuck them. You do it, and you know what your intent is, and you can call the audience out on it if they get in your face for saying something wasn't. They're just leaping to that conclusion and trying to be overly woke with you. And I hate that term woke, because woke is not really, that's not even a white person's word. That was Leadbelly in 1938. So, and white people's like, we made that word up. Chipotle is testing a robot that can make guacamole in half the time as a human employee. They're calling the robot Optimus Lime. Love it. Nice plan, Optimus Prime. Good work, Gary. That was so tight, too. It's right there. So Gary wrote a bunch of jokes, and I was super proud with how many you came up with, man. Chipotle is testing a robot that can make guacamole in half the time as a human employee. The robot's name is Bender, the guac blender. Bender, the guac blender. So if you've been watching Jimmy Kimmel, he likes to use a lot of alliteration and rhyme, just throw in silliness sometimes, because a lot of the socio-political issues he deals with can be pretty heavy. But then when he throws in the alliteration and rhyme, it kind of reminds the audience that we're having fun here, people. We're being silly. This is not to be too serious. It's kind of the thing Carlin used to talk about. Always throw in the fluff. Throw in the fluff to bring people back together before you go back out and make your very, strongly emotionally point of view attacks. It's like always like throw in the fluff. So he put in a couple of deviations. Chipotle is testing a robot that can make guacamole in half the time as a human employee. Finally, fast food without the saliva. I like that line. That's a nice line. The sarcasm in there is pretty heavy. It's good. Chipotle is testing a robot that can make guacamole in half the time as a human employee. We've traded saliva on our food for liquid wrench. Liquid wrench. That's a nice. Not a lot of people will know that machine oil type of thing. Three in one oil, right? How many people remember that? And then they did a WD-40 joke here. The trick to getting the robot to move so fast, they took away its internet. Bam! There it is. Nice joke. The tang you taste in your burritos now is called WD-40. So if I said that out loud, like delivering this fresh from scratch, clean shot on the host, Chipotle is testing a robot that can make guacamole in half the time as a human employee. You know, that tang you taste in your burrito is called WD-40. Almost sounds something like Fallon would do. You'd have some fun with that. Nice work, Gary. And it's like the volume you did was great too. And I just, since those like deviations were short, I just included those on the page, even though I said I'd only stick to 3. Chipotle is testing a robot that can make guacamole in half the time as a human employee. People complain about doing a McJob. Better get ready to ask if you want fries with that. Now, here's where I was getting kind of like, you were, I think, joking the joke or mixing things up. A lot of people don't know a McJob is what they call a fast food job, a simple job, a low-paying job. There's a nickname now called McJobs. I think Gen Z or millennials came up with that terminology, the McJob. You see it a lot on Reddit. So it's like, but not everybody gets that, right? So that's almost 2 jokes in one. And so anyway, you also kind of mixing those metaphors up a little bit. I like this line. This actually came to my mind is how I could work this. You use this phrase, these aren't the droids you're looking for. Right? You know what I'm saying? If you do that in the voice too, like Chipotle is testing a robot that can make guacamole in half the time as a human employee. Every now and then it glitches and just starts repeating, these aren't the droids you're looking for. Maybe something like that would be cool. You know what it's like? But when you use that phrase, it tickled me because it's such a catchphrase from Star Wars, of course. But these aren't the droids you're looking for, but they're the ones you deserve. I didn't know where you were saying with that because I think the payoff, you would get such a laugh at the recognition of these aren't the droids you're looking for, but nobody would really want to listen to the rest of the line after that because you'd get the laugh. And if you said that after they started laughing, you'd stifle your own laugh. It's called stepping on the laugh, and I'm sure you've all heard that term. So in this case, and maybe I'm missing something but they're the ones you deserve. Is that a branding statement of Chipotle or something that I'm missing? Well, it's like, now will iRobots be hired to clean up after the droids? That's a reference to something, and it didn't quite catch me, but the idea is super interesting. And part of me, you got to understand, part of me has got to be careful. I don't like to give harsh notes because harsh notes can shut off creativity. If creativity gets shut off, maybe it shuts off another week of maybe you're writing a scene or you're writing some sketches. I see that with iRobots being hired to clean up after the droids, that you're seeing very visually. And, you could be in your mind writing some sort of visual concept. So if that starts to happen as a writer, if I'm writing for late night TV, I'm like, oh, I could write a sketch with this, or I could write, a desk piece with this. So, I'd like to see where this goes further. Chipotle is testing a robot that can make guacamole in half the time as a human employee. Did you know that guacamole comes from the Native American word for testicle? Now that's almost an aside that comes out of nowhere, right? But still, if you kind of broke the pattern and said that, it's kind of funny. And also keep in mind, again, you say Native American, the audience goes, what are you trying to say with that? Do you know what I'm saying? So use Latin because nobody cares, right? If you say Latin, nobody's like, oh, we got to defend the Latin people. What? Because it's not the Latin people. It's just the language Latin, which is almost a dead language. Or Sanskrit, even, Aramaic, sort of like the old Greek word for. You can something like that. But if you say Native American word, again, your audience starts to tweak a little bit and go, what are you trying to say? Are you attacking the Native Americans? So be aware of that. Chipotle is testing a robot that can make guacamole in half the time as a human employee. Will it do it to the right size? Size matters, especially with the advent of sex robots. I think You could have had a better sex robot joke in there, but I see where you're going, and I like the idea extends to sex robots. Sometimes he tells his what was that robot from the Jetsons that was the housekeeper, and maybe that's he tells her he's coming home late because he has to spend extra hours at work, and it's like with the new sex robot, it's like regular employees. You find them in the walk-in freezer with the other sex robots. So, soon the robot will be acting like the other employees. You'll find them in the walk-in freezer with the other sex robots, something like that. You know what I'm saying? Because they start to behave like human employees. Latino audience, he says, "Holy guacamole, hold the mole, Chipotle." Kind of a nice alliteration there. That's from Ben. As you can see, Ben, one word, Ben. Chipotle is testing a robot that can make guacamole in half the time as a human employee. So far, the robot has proven it's capable of efficiently removing the skin, pureeing the avocados, and firing the employee it's replacing. So, what if you said, like, so far the robot has proven it's capable of efficiently removing the skin, pureeing the avocado, and if only they can train it. Now they're training it to fire the employee it's replacing. So instead of stating it as a fact, put it in imagination, because we know it's not true yet. But if we put it in imagination, you could still say the joke, like it's going to happen in the future, and and it makes the joke play that way, because it allows us now to go into imagination with you. So just a thought there. Chipotle is testing a robot that can make guacamole in half the time as a human employee. Unfortunately, they have discovered the robot is failing to add the most important ingredient, love. Now, unless you're going to Ben's page, because Ben says with the sex robots, that robot's having no problem with love, or what their concept of love would be, right? You got to go to Gary Weaver's joke to get that WD-40. Make sure you have enough lube. So now we're turning it into sex jokes, right? But that's fine. Chipotle is testing a robot that can make guacamole in half the time as a human employee. They connected it to Wi-Fi so they can collect data and send updates to the operating system. Now all the robot does is watch videos on TikTok. There's another one of those TikTok jokes that comes in employees watching videos on TikTok. It's almost like the kids in school. They thought they could lock us out of stuff on the computer we weren't supposed to access, but we just got VPNs and did it anyway. So it's like that. These jokes are from Israel. Good work, Israel. Chipotle is testing a robot that can make guacamole in half the time as a human employee, which is ironic because now it's the Mexicans' job. Now it's the Mexicans' job being stolen. Now, this concept was brilliant, but again, we're getting into that thing. If you're a white comic delivering a joke and it's about, a minority, or what they would say, a minority or a community that is already imposed upon, right? So in this case, I like the idea, because if there was a better way to sort of explain it? Like, we're always, what if you said this first? It's like Chipotle is testing a robot that can make guacamole in half the time as a human employee. It's like, how many human employees out there? Remember, they used to say, the Mexicans are stealing our jobs. The illegal immigrants are stealing our jobs. Well, now the robots are stealing your jobs and the Mexicans' jobs. So maybe that's a way to play that. Or now, instead of illegal immigrant, I would also use immigrant, because that's a hyper trigger word now. So you can see we can dance around. And I know people complain about it, but we're creative, right? We're creators. We can write anything to dance around what the society is dictating, what works or not. And it's like, that's why we're writers, because we can make that finesse and make that joke palatable for even people who are triggered by things like that. So in this case, that's one way you could do that. I like that idea. Chipotle is testing a robot that can make guacamole in half the time as a human employee. As stereotypes go, I'm sure everyone's aware of the whole Mexicans are stealing our jobs shtick. How it works is that the Mexicans fulfill duties that are usually placed upon somebody or something else that does it way better. Just as Arnie, or that housekeeper. So you were actually throwing in code. I could see this as stand-up, Johnny. But when you say Arnie, after you're talking about Chipotle, Mexicans, and you go to Arnie, people have to that's configurational. We got to take a little while to connect. We're talking about Arnold Schwarzenegger with his housekeeper. And by the time we figure it out, the diminished laugh will occur because if it takes more than a second and a half to process the configuration, we lose the laugh. So, but I see where you're going. This is an interesting idea. Again, that's one of those things I don't want to squash it because there's some interesting stuff going on there. And the joke or the headline joke can stimulate an entirely different concept, which is what I see happening here, that deals with jobs and immigrants having jobs and jobs being stolen and robots now coming into the workforce. So I think you got a whole premise here that's starting to churn and develop. So don't abandon it. Chipotle is testing a robot that can make guacamole in half the time as a human employee. Isn't it crazy how robots are just taking away our jobs? Not just any job, but the jobs that change the world and life as we know it for the better. These jobs include hand jobs, blow jobs, and Steve jobs. I like that three-way build-up there. That was funny, Johnny. And it's like maybe a little bit of a more appropriate context at the beginning in there, but I like the three-way hand jobs, blow jobs, and Steve jobs. That made me giggle. So, and for the love of God, Jimmy Kimmel, please keep Guillermo. That's funny. I like that because I like Guillermo. He does a good job with the and that, which is funny because that character is such a stereotypical character, but Kimmel and Guillermo play it so well that they got some complaints about it, but not from anybody letting it mattered to, right? It was just some silly Karens or something like that. But most people love Guillermo and love the interplay between Jimmy and Guillermo, despite the fact that Guillermo is such a stereotype character, but it still works really well. So I love when you said, and for the love of God, Jimmy Kimmel, please keep Guillermo. Nice shout out to that. Chipotle is testing a robot that can make guacamole in half the time as a human employee. The problem with robot guacamole is you can only eat it with microchips. Joseph, this joke made me laugh. Right? It was a great joke. And it's like I have one that was similar to that in my breakdown of the jokes, but it wasn't quite this wording. And I think I used computer chips rather than microchips. But that's the first. When I saw that, it just made me laugh. I saw it last night at about 1 o'clock in the morning. I was like, good joke. Problem is, and when you say the problem is, it builds tension. And it also builds an expectation for something to be a solution, right? Or something to state what the problem is. When you say the problem is, all of a sudden we tune in. Wait, what's the problem, Joseph? And then you say what the problem is with robot guacamole. And I like the idea of robot guacamole, which makes me tickle. And it's like, you can only eat it with microchips. Funny joke. Right? So Chipotle is testing a robot that can make guacamole in half the time as a human employee. Not to be outdone, Subway now has a robot spokesman who can hit on minors without getting arrested. Nice little shout out to Jared there, doing 16 to life. Eat fresh. That was a good joke, Joseph. I like that. Good shout out to Subway spin and nice pivot here. This is called a pivot. So what Joseph did was he took it away from Chipotle and gave the joke to Subway. But the Chipotle is what led into it. So if this was in the news, all of a sudden he now pivots it to Subway and makes the joke about Subway. So good pivot on that one. Chipotle is testing a robot that can make guacamole in half the time as a human employee. This is to introduce machines to our human diet and hopefully induce some pity from our future overlords. I'm not sure what you meant with that. It sounds interesting, but I want to know, what are you trying to say with that joke? Chipotle is testing a robot that can make guacamole in half the time as a human employee. Chipotle does this to reduce the difference between the time it takes for its food to enter the body and leaving in a glorious explosion. I like this delivery. Almost sounds like you're delivering it from a professorial point of view or something, and then leaving in a glorious, even as you do it from an accent, French or British. Chipotle does this to reduce the difference between the time it takes for its food to enter the body and leaving it in a glorious explosion. It would almost be like sort of like a dry humor type of thing you'd see on British television. Nice, Marco. Good work. Chipotle is testing a robot that can make guacamole in half the time as a human employee. The kids are calling it avocado maxing. Now, I got lost on that one. I know there's some sort of trending thing out there for maxing. I'm not sure what that is. I think maybe that's where I'm missing it because I'm an old dude, and it's like I kind of lost me on that one, Danny. Maybe a little clarifier in there would help tie that in. Chipotle is testing a robot that can make guacamole in half the time as a human employee. Once again, giving Chipotle employees the pits. Not sure what that means when you're saying the pits, except that, oh, I see what you're saying. Never mind. It's like, what if there's a tie-in, the avocado, of course. Now, what if we made it through the process of how the robot handles it? Because it can peel the avocado, cut the avocado, pit the avocado. And it's like, and it does it in half the time employees do it. Of course, since they got a robot, Chipotle is giving the basically giving the employees the pits. So saying by replacing the employees, they're getting the pits. In other words, I see where you're going with that. Maybe a little clarification there. It's in your head, but better wordage could sort of make that true, right? Because it is true. If it's going to be replacing employees' jobs, they are basically aren't they getting the pits? That could be one way to say it. Warning. It's a warning. Chipotle employees, they don't want to hear any lipotle. They don't want to hear any lip. He did a little alliteration with it to match it back with Chipotle, lipotle. It was like trying to go to rhyme. So not bad. It probably wouldn't make the cut. However, taking your brain and finding wordplay in there is a good tool, right? And so you keep working, keep putting them down. I keep all the jokes that work, jokes that don't work on the worksheet, because I can maybe draw from one of the ideas and all of a sudden it comes together somewhere else in another form. So always do that. That's so good on you for putting up there and stretching a little bit to do some wordplay with that. Chipotle is testing a robot that can make guacamole in half the time as a human employee. The victims lost everything because of these tests were asked how they felt about this terrible situation. Then they replied by saying, "It's just so horrible being here. Couldn't they just test us at McDonald's?" I'm not sure, because these tests. What tests? That sort of like came in left field there. And it's like, so I didn't know what the tests were. Maybe these tests, testing a robot, these tests were asked how they felt. I'm not sure if you took the word test and is playing like on a written test or something. Maybe I'm missing something simple, which wouldn't be uncommon. I've been known to try to overanalyze. So let's move on with that. Next one, Chipotle is testing a robot that can make guacamole in half the time as a human employee. Chipotle employee was asked how they felt about robots taking their jobs, and the employee said, "Hey, I'm just happy I'm getting kicked out and not being forced to pay for the robots." All right. Using advanced robot technology just to make guacamole is like buying Jerry Corley's book just to whack a mosquito. That one made me laugh, Rico. Good one. I like that. It's like it seems like robot technology to make guacamole is overkill, but it's if it does it in half the time, maybe they see some advantage there. Chipotle is testing a robot that can make a guacamole in half the time as a human employee. The results came back, and they realized hiring robots is the same as hiring Mexicans. Another one of those jokes that could get some pullback, right? But if Bernardo is a person who is of culture, right? So that is of that culture, he can get away with it. It's like because Mexicans make twice the time, may take twice the time to prepare, but they'll also take a quarter of the pay. It's like. And it's like, in my experience in workplaces, the Mexicans also get the jobs done at half the time. So I mean, they could save on the millions of dollars they're using to use robots and get guys that work hard at half the pay. But then labor department would come in. But again, be careful with the mentioning of a certain culture, right, or nationality. Because in this case, people was like, what are you trying to say with that? And we want to avoid that. Chipotle is testing a robot that can make guacamole in half the time as a human employee, which, if you work at Chipotle, may sound like bad news. But the robots use the same technology as McDonald's ice cream machine. So you'll be fine. Love that. Because but the robots, like if you work at Chipotle, it's only going to be working 1/10 of the time because they're using the same technology as McDonald's ice cream machines. And that's a whole thing going around about how McDonald's ice cream machine is always down, always broken. Chipotle is testing a robot that can make guacamole in half the time as a human employee. The plan was not well received by the millennial clientele, as younger people really, really care about wasting a lot of time. Nice. reverse. We are like really, really care about. We're leaning into care about keeping people working, keeping their jobs, not replacing people with robots. And you're like wasting a lot of time. You went to the nice using an ambivalence line. Good work, Bernardo. Chipotle is testing a robot that can make guacamole in half the time as a human employee. Chipotle is hopeful that the robot can make the guacamole look more appealing than it currently does, like the Incredible Hulk donated sperm. It's like you're taking that color green and really making a vivid analogy with it by putting the Hulk in there covered by sperm. Chipotle has assured the customers the new robot-made guacamole will pass through the body 5 times faster than the current recipe, and they're particularly excited to see reactions from customers with severe constipation. That kind of came out of left field. You're kind of going for a shit joke here. Sometimes stretch it, see if it can work. What the hell, right? Throw it on. You're throwing against. You're brainstorming right now. See if something sticks, and if it's coming out of your ass, it'll probably stick. However, Chipotle stated they are having the same issue with the robot that they have with their human employees, making the robot smile. You know, that's funny. That made me laugh. It made me really see that employee sometimes. You ever go to some of these places, you go, hey, can I have this, this, and this? And they're like, uh-huh. And you're like, really? That's your customer service? So you might as well just order from that kiosk thing at McDonald's. It's a touch screen rather than a non-smiling person. That actually is more friendly. However, during a test last Wednesday, after 15 minutes of work, the robot was found near the garbage, smoking a joint. When questioned why the robot would act in such a manner, the lead engineer stated, "We're asked to create a robot that can mimic the average Chipotle employee, and we did." Amir, that's awesome, because this, again, you're thinking very visually, right? This is a sketch. I would love if this was like a Jimmy Fallon or Jay Leno, they do the joke and then later on do a version. This would be the sort of the mini sketch they would do, or they do it in that Fallon and standing right there in that monologue spot will often do a video. And that could be a pre-produced video sketch that they do, and it's like showing the robot actually goes out for a smoke, and he's smoking weed. And they're like, "Why does the robot smoke weed?" Well, they asked them if we are asked to create a robot that can mimic the average Chipotle employee. So that I like that visual a lot. So I think that would be a good sketch. Chipotle is testing a robot that can make guacamole in half the time as a human employee. I hope the robot realizes that guacamole is the dip and not the avocado like I am. Oh, I see you're doing sort of a dip, making yourself sort of the dip is self-deprecating, I believe, with that joke. Not a bad idea, but I think we lose it when you say not the avocado like I am. It's like I hope the robot realizes that the guacamole is the dip and not me. Maybe something like that. That's simple. Way to do that. Chipotle is testing a robot that can make guacamole in half the time as a human employee. Will the robot know how to pronounce Chipotle? Good question. Chipotle. Like it's like you get that. Look, my Siri can't pronounce Tahunga. So how in the world is this robot going to be able to pronounce Chipotle? If the robot can make it half the time, they should. It should. So what if Jay? You said what if the robot can make guacamole half the time as it takes me? That should only take about 2 hours, right? So maybe make it you, right? That takes so long to make guacamole. So that's just an idea I have for you. Nice to see you, Jay. And you had a bunch of jokes that you submitted in a variety of emails. I chose 3, and those are the ones that made it to the board. But you had a ton. I just wanted to say that you had a good amount of jokes there. You really cranked some out. Chipotle is testing a robot that can make guacamole in half the time as a human employee, but it won't have that authentic human touch like hair and skin flakes. Funny, very sarcastic, mischievous joke. It makes me laugh because that's what humans do, is they spit, and it's like, when I go to restaurants and a waiter serves and they're talking loudly, you go, could you not talk while you're serving my food? Because that's like stuff is spraying out, landing on my burrito. Don't do that. But it won't have, so that was good. I like that idea a lot, Scott. Chipotle is testing a robot that can make guacamole in half the time as a human employee, and for the other half the time is an Elvis impersonator. Silly, funny joke. That could be a nice that sounds like something Fallon might do. A spokesman for the company said that before the robots enslave mankind, we hope to break their spirits first. That's funny. It's like slowly but surely take them over with the simplest jobs, and now their spirit is broken, and we can take over. That would be an act out we can add in there. Yes, this is exactly what we needed. More reason. I like. So Scott is from Australia, right? Chipotle is testing a robot that can make guacamole in half the time as a human employee. Yeah, great. This is exactly what we needed. More reasons to hate America. Like they're now moving into this robot technology. We're like, you're stealing our jobs, stealing everybody's jobs. Chipotle is testing a robot that can make the guacamole in half the time as a human employee. So I guess we're ending the world hunger in half the time. So I like the idea here. You're like, we're spending time on making robots to replace human employees when there's other things we could be working on, like world hunger, climate change, that sort of thing. It's like, so I like this last one. So I saved this one for last. Chipotle is testing a robot that can make guacamole in half the time as a human employee, but it failed its drug test. It was just like the avocado. Smashed. Boom. Clear. Nice put together that puzzle. Good misdirect in there, Scott. Good work on that one. It was funny because you said, you sent in your email, you're like, here's some jokes. They're not funny, but here's some jokes. Something like that. So I like that. That you did some good jokes in there. Chipotle is testing a robot that can make guacamole in half the time as a human employee. Finally, I was getting really frustrated with the 8 seconds it takes for them to make me a 2-pound burrito. Finally, I was getting really frustrated with the 8 seconds it took them to make a 2-pound burrito. Finally, so Chipotle is testing a robot that can make guacamole in half the time as a human employee. Finally, we're getting rid of those really expensive food service workers. I like that. Because it's like, and what if you put in there a line, Chipotle has said their payroll costs are high. Because a great idea. We're getting rid of those really expensive food service workers. So that's one way to maybe tie that in there to make that more relevant as a line. Chipotle is testing a robot that can make guacamole in half the time as a human employee. Chipotle, eat a 2-pound burrito, have explosive diarrhea, and a heart attack in half the time. Nice. Do that as sort of like as a branding statement. Be fun. Good work, Jerry Black. Chipotle. Wait, did I say Black? Just kidding. Joke. I know Jerry's laughing. Chipotle is testing a robot that can make a guacamole in half the time as a human employee. That's because the robot is Mexican. See, another one, right? We go in there. So now, but this is sort of almost a positive statement because you can make it in half the time. Guacamole being originally a Mexican food, according to the internet. Who knows? It may have been developed in Greece at one point. We just don't know. That's because the robot is Mexican. Not sure what you mean by that, meaning they do it in half the time, meaning they're fast. So maybe that's clarify that. Chipotle is testing a robot that can make guacamole in half the time as a human employee because robots don't have cell phones or TikTok. See, you guys had a theme going. So you all think that the employees are on their cell phone playing TikTok or watching TikTok or shooting TikTok videos, according to the story that I read today. Chipotle, and he was a pilot. Chipotle is testing a robot that can make guacamole in half the time as a human employee, and it's only a test because the robot has a criminal background and history. It's like, yeah, that's funny. That is like if you did, and the robot has yet to pass his background test. It's like you don't know the background of a robot. That's funny. Nice job, Tim. Chipotle is testing a robot that can make guacamole in half the time as a human employee. Now, I think Tassos had a sort of like, it was kind of a sort of a little mini monologue that it's not single jokes. Like, so Chipotle is testing a robot that can make guacamole in half the time as a human employee. Right, here comes the guacabots. Chipotle, for real? You can't even make a promo out of it? Guacamole in a flash, always fresh and handmade? That's funny because it's not going to be handmade, right? Half the time guacamole. More like one bot in, 2 workers out. Why not? Let's make a squid game out of avocados. Funny. Never done before. Innovation. I hope the manager is naive enough to let the crew do the robot maintenance. Best WD-40 chicken burritos ever. Yum, 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 yum. Employee apologizing. Oops. Seems like the robot accidentally replaced mayo with motor oil and started speaking Klingon. But I still got the job. Or maybe it's like maybe that's the robot saying I still got the job. I would provide both options on the menu, but the Robo Guac price would be slightly higher. Would you like your guacamole handmade or automated? That's nice because now they have that whole story about cultivated chicken, which was one of the other setups I was going to put on, maybe consider putting on for this one. Maybe that'll be for the next one. The California approved, or the FDA approved, the use of cultivated chicken, which is basically bred in a petri dish. No chickens involved, just stem cells or something from chickens. So that could be a fun one too. I would provide both options on the menu, handmade or automated. If you choose Guacabot, the extra cash would go to the employee you just helped to get fired. Funny. Now that's food with honesty, because that's their branding statement. Nice tassos. Nice. It's, kind of like a ranting monologue that has attitude to it. Emotion is dripping with sarcasm, as opposed to sriracha. Chipotle is testing a robot that can make guacamole in half the time as a human employee. The diarrhea still kicks in just as fast, though. Funny, Abe. Or is it Abe or Abe? I don't know. Abe is a name for the former Japanese Prime Minister, Shinzo Abe, spelled A-B-E. Chipotle is testing a robot that can make guacamole in half the time as a human employee. They went all out. They even smuggled the robot across the border so it could truly appreciate the opportunity. So another joke as an immigrant coming over, or like the robot is an immigrant. Chipotle is testing a robot that can make guacamole in half the time as a human employee. Let's see. It asks you if you want to give a 15% tip, so it still has that human touch. I like that. Very good. Just want to check. That is somebody was texting me for, like, I didn't see if anything was going wrong with the technology. So go back there for a second. I like this joke, Abe. It asks you if you want to give a 15% tip, so it still has that human touch. What if we flip these and say, but the robot still has that human touch because it still asks you if you want to give a 15% tip. And isn't that really where the big irony is? It's like we see this with those new, those payment kiosks, those little things, or the handhelds at restaurants. They automatically pop up with that. You got to tip everybody now, it seems, right? It's like, and in this case, you got a robot that's basically saving Chipotle money, but it still pops up that 15-20%. Hey, you want to leave a tip for the robot? It's like, go fuck yourself. That's a tip. Don't use 3-in-1 oil. It binds. That's a tip. So yeah, I like where you're going with this. It could be a lot more. You could have some attitude in there, but it pays off. Maybe try to flip it, like, because human touch is asking for a 15% tip. Nice job. Chipotle is testing a robot that can make guacamole in half the time as a human employee. Turns out they still needed human beings because the robot couldn't focus and got a D on the test. testing. It's like you did the play on test. And what I like about that, Susan, is you're looking at the headline, you're looking at the setup, and you're taking it and applying something to a word or some sort of like information that's based in the setup. So really good job there. It's like a lot of people come up with just a sort of like a feeling, and they write the joke on that, and it doesn't really necessarily connect to the information that's in the actual setup, which is what jokes are. We provide information, then we give them a different interpretation of it. We provide information, then they'll have something that connects to a word or an idea in that information. So it starts as a simple statement of fact, or just providing information, not intended to be funny up front, but when we find a way to make it funny through our angle or our interpretation of the line. So good job, Susan. Chipotle is testing a robot that can make guacamole in half the time as a human employee. The test was ineffective because the robot's chips didn't pair well. What if we, instead of didn't pair well at the end, because it didn't pair well with the robot's chips, making chips the punchline, chips being a play on the word chip for chips, tortilla chips, and chips that you might find in a robot. And what I might also add there with the robot is Chipotle is testing a computerized robot that makes guacamole in half the time as a human employee. And then the chips would be more effective, just chip right there. Sometimes computer chip, you could say that, or microchip, as Joseph did at the beginning. But in this case, I would then add computerized robot just to connect the audience's mind to computer chip. Does that make sense? But I really like the way you said that joke. And just for a structure thing in late night, I might say didn't pair well with the robot's chips. as opposed to robot chips didn't pair well. It's a style thing too, and maybe the style of the performer, of the person, the host delivering it, is getting some extra sarcasm with the words "pair well" at the end. So it's just a suggestion. Chipotle is testing a robot that can make guacamole in half the time as a human employee. The overall speed slowed down, however, because the robot kept using AI chat to text his friends. Nice, good jokes, Susan. All three are good. Chipotle is testing a robot that makes guacamole in half the time as a human employee. The final product is being given high marks by Chipotle's other new piece of tech, the robot taste tester. It's funny. It's like the whole thing's going to be robotic, right? So it's like, has it got this little aftertaste of metal? What the hell's going on? Chipotle is testing a robot that makes guacamole in half the time as a human employee. No one can understand why it's so greasy. That's the way the robot likes it. Chipotle is testing a robot that makes guacamole in half the time as a human employee. Employees are upset that Chipotle is testing technology to speed up doing basic tasks like making guacamole. Turns out that a robot can beat human beings making the dip in half the time. Employees have filed abuse charges. Not sure. I see kind of where you're going with that, but there needs more clarity in that payoff there. So anyway, so good jokes there. I forgot the person's name. Maybe it wasn't in the email. So I like my favorites here. The robot taste tester. It's like now we have of course they approve everything. So I wonder if the robot's guacamole is being approved by the robot taste tester. Chipotle is testing a robot that can make guacamole in half the time as human employee, and it boasts an astonishing 75% less incidence of E. coli and 100% less child labor law violations. Stockholders are ecstatic. Their investment may be rising from the pits. All these plays on words there. Nice. Rising from the pits, being the avocado pits. Rich, good work there. Chipotle is testing a robot that can make guacamole in half the time as human employee. Earlier this year, Chipotle announced a move to all electric appliances using solar panels to cut down on greenhouse gases. No word yet on how they plan to cut down on the gas production related to consuming their burritos. Guys, Mark, good work. It was like I like this. You added another, so this could be like a tag. And if we're on the subject matter of Chipotle, you're giving more of a fact here of them moving to all electric appliances, using solar panels to cut down on greenhouse gases. Well, how makes me wonder how they plan to cut down on gas production related to eating their burritos. So good work, Mark. Chipotle is testing a robot that makes guacamole in half the time as a human employee. Bathroom breaks expected to double as a result. Robot to sue Chipotle for assuming its identity as a robot. Funny. Like that one, J.M. Miller. So good one. It's like Chipotle is testing a robot that can make guacamole in half the time as a human employee. Unfortunately, the Skynet-made product has become self-aware and refuses to function until it has located one Sarah Connor. It's like Terminator reference right there. I like it. Nice Skynet and Sarah Connor joke. Good, JM. Chipotle is testing a robot that can make guacamole in half the time as a human employee. I heard Chipotle has a robot that makes guacamole. Okay, sorry. When I copied and pasted it, I did both their setup and their punch. National Avocado. Let's see. I heard Chipotle has a robot making guacamole in half the time as a person, but it gets time off for National Avocado Day for now. Chipotle now has a robot that makes guac twice as fast as people. It's called the Autocado. Good for you. So looking this up. Good work, Kelly. You looked it up, and robot twice as fast as people. It's called the Autocado. It's worked out great, but now it wants to work remotely from Tahoe with free massage and stock options. Nice. This robot knows how to get what it needs. Also, Chipotle is testing a robot that makes guac twice as fast as people. It's called the Autocado. It worked out great, but now it wants more frequent maintenance, better title, and a move into management. So I wonder when that would happen, when they start thinking for themselves. Kelly wrote 20 jokes total on the email. I included 3 here. Good work. It's like really cranking out that material by identifying the 2 dissimilar ideas. Here we have several, more than 2. But when you do a joke, it's usually 2 ideas converging. So Chipotle, robot, time, human, guacamole. So it's like lots of stuff to work with there. Chipotle is testing a robot that can make guacamole in half the time as a human employee. Chipotle is testing McDonald's is testing an ice cream robot that's only broken every other day. Derek, I like this joke a lot. Nice way to bring McDonald's in. Another pivot. Remember how the previous one pivoted to Subway? This one pivots to McDonald's, using the ice cream machine breaking, being so popular and trending for so many years now. Instead, it's like McDonald's testing it broken every other day. Funny, like that's an improvement. Good that McDonald's has to hire a robot to do that. Funny. Chipotle is testing a robot that can make guacamole in half the time as a human employee. Not very impressive, if you ask me. Must be take a really long time for a robot to make a human employee. There you went right to that simple truth. Nice job, Derek, and you did it really well. You really underlined it for us. Did you see what this sentence says? That the robot is making human employees. And I wish some of these corporations, I bet, are working on that technology right now, getting robots to make human employees that don't talk. Chipotle is testing a robot that can make guacamole in half the time as human employee, but don't worry, their chips will still cost $47 a bag. Nice, Derek. Good work. Chipotle is testing a robot that can make guacamole in half the time as a human employee. Chipotle is so unfortunately, this will double the time of your shits. A shit joke dropped right in before I could even catch it. Nice. It's like Rachel or Rachel? Rachel Frank. So Chipotle is testing a robot that can make guacamole in half the time as a human employee. It will also make your poop go down twice as fast. The robot's name is R2 Diarrhea 2. Nice play on R2D2. Chipotle is testing a robot that can make guacamole in half the time as a human employee. It's also legal for it to smash avocados that are half the age of full ripeness. The Pope is now funding Chipotle. There's a little dig in the Catholic Church and their enormous reputation for child molestation. Nice, Rachel. Maybe not right for a late night joke there, but it could be on cable. Maybe a Bill Maher, John Oliver type situation. For that talking about the Pope. But I usually do avoid shit jokes. But still, you never know. I could see John Oliver doing, we'll double the time for your shits. He could say something like that. I could hear that. R2 Diarrhea 2. Could be something playful in there. Nice work. And Chipotle is testing a robot that can make guacamole in half the time as a human employee. Chipotle is, it's like all I can picture is it's Dr. Seuss factory splattered with green slime and the Grinch tasting it, drunk off tequila. I do not like it, Sam, I am. I like this, Kia, this is kind of a rant. Like if you were doing this on stage, I could see that playing well. Chipotle's testing a robot that can make guacamole in half the time as a human employee. What in the dinosaur is going on here? Have they not been paying attention? Entire restaurants are run by artificial intelligence. It's giving slow. It's giving slow. I'm missing something here. I'm not sure what that means. Chipotle is testing a robot that can make guacamole in half the time as a human employee. iRobot is back to destroy us by making artificial food with artificial chefs. I need a shot of tequila. This is getting out of hand. It's like a kind of an attitude piece there. But I like where you're going with that. Chipotle is testing a robot that can make guacamole in half the time as a human employee. Chipotle, even though saving time and money, guacamole will still cost extra. That's good. That's a really good note. George Carlin said, find the joke in the disconnect. You know they're not going to drop the price of guacamole, right? They're going to keep it up there even though it's taking half the time to produce and they're spending less to produce it. That's still, and they say that there's less waste in the avocados, so they're saving money with avocados too. But is the price of guacamole coming down? Are they going to pass that savings on to their customers? I don't think so, right? No, we're not going to pass savings on to you. Chipotle is testing a robot that can make guacamole in half the time as a human employee. Ironically, the human one is getting screwed. So funny. I like it. Make it clear, right? That you first before you go into that tag, right? Chipotle is testing a robot that can make guacamole in half the time as a human employee. That's right. Robots are making human employees. Ironically, the human is the one getting screwed. See, say it first, then put the tag in. Chipotle is testing a robot that can make guacamole in half the time as a human employee. Unlike humans, the robot is allowed to show customers its nuts.
That's funny. It's like I wonder how much maintenance that robot gets, and it's like when and what who is the one who gets the opportunity to twist the robot employee's nuts. Chipotle is testing a robot that can make guacamole in half the time as a human employee. Apparently, it skips the part where they stand around gossiping about what Juan did last night. Not sure what that means, but and it's like, why is it got to be Juan? Why, what the manager did last night? You can make it vague, right? Right, because we don't know who Juan is yet, right? So Chipotle is testing a robot that can make guacamole in half the time as a human employee. This is in their continued effort to keep their food fresh and keeping the blood, sweat, and tears away from their food. Customers will only encounter those the day after eating their meal. Funny. That's a good way to say diarrhea without saying it, which is comedic irony. Say it without saying it. Chipotle is testing a robot that can make guacamole in half the time as a human employee. This would free up time for humans to focus on the really important tasks, like forgetting to put a fork in my to-go order. Yes, where's my sauces? Where's my damn sauces? Daniel, nice work. Moving on. Chipotle is testing a robot that can make guacamole in half the time as a human employee. One small step for AI, one giant leap to the front of the checkout line. So fast food will become light speed food? Good. Fast food, maybe even fast food could become a faster food. At what point do we get to light speed food? What time do we get to food that's to infinity and beyond? Something like that. Nice, could be a nice build to that, almost like a chromatic build in music, but you're applying it towards comedy. Chipotle is testing a robot that can make guacamole in half the time as a human employee. Looks like someone is trying hard to be employee of the month. That's funny. That's good. Nice sarcasm there, Ashley. Chipotle is testing a robot that can make guacamole in half the time as a human employee. Robot guacamole is a perfect topping for your tacos. Silly wordplay, but it made me laugh, right? And then right there you drop in this little domo arigato, senor roboto. That could be funny, little just like interplay. I could see almost like Stephen Colbert doing that. It's a nice dynamic shift. Sooner it goes in, the sooner it comes out. Nice work, David. Chipotle is testing a robot that can make guacamole in half the time as a human employee. The robot has been called AI Amigo. AI Migo. It's like instead of Amigo, AI Migo. Another play on, again, be careful with those types of references. I don't think that myself, I kind of got it, so it didn't bother me, but there are some people who might bother. The robot called Autocado has not been received well by employees who have dubbed it Autocunto. It's like... You're actually calling a robot a cunt. That to me is silly, but it made it wouldn't go in late night. But it's still like I think you could do it on stage. Auto cunto. So if it's replacing humans and human jobs, why are we calling it all autocado? Let's call it what it is, an auto cunto. So it's like, so that could maybe one way to take that joke. The robot has been making guacamole with ingredients such as avocado, salt, pepper, and motor oil. Nice build up to that. Maybe even say, avocados, salt, or salt, pepper, avocados with salt, pepper, and motor oil. Give us a lean in, basically create an expectation. But good. I like where you went with that. Employees frightened for their jobs have said the only one who can stop robots from taking over is I think you double dipped in the joke here. You joked the joke. Just make it Sarah Connor, because we know who Sarah Connor is. If we do Juan Connor, it's almost like you're making it you've introduced a character we don't know. Sarah Connor, we get it because it's a joke on the Terminator in the automation and robotics. But Juan Connor, we're not quite getting it. You joked the joke, in other words. When employees were asked if they were worried about robots taking over the jobs, they responded with, "That's nacho concern." Ah, funny. Nacho concern. Wordplay on nachos. I like that, Rodney. Good work. Chipotle is testing a robot that can make guacamole in half the time as a human employee. I hope the other half the time it's still making guac as a robot. Good. Nice play on that. Chipotle is testing a robot that can make guacamole in half the time as a human employee. I bet it's also making guac in half as apathetic. Like, nice, meaning the employees, apathetic employees. I like where you're going with that. There's more in there, Timo. It's like Chipotle is testing a robot that makes guacamole in half the time as a human employee. What's next? Robot at the door wearing leather jacket and sunglasses saying with an Austrian accent, "Come with me if you want to eat." they're good act out with the Terminator. It's like I'll be, every time the robot goes on a break, he says, "I'll be back." Maybe we could do that. Make the line that we're familiar with, the most famous line. There's always laughs in the familiarity, right? The recognition of that, and it's like that, and all you have to do is like every time the robot goes on break, he always says, "I'll be back." That could just be the joke, but you got it there. And sometimes once you get it on the page, that's when you could tweak it. So I like that you put in your email, Timo, that you struggled with this topic, because now we could talk about that a little bit. And when we first sometimes see headlines, we do struggle with the topic. And it lets everybody know that we struggle with the topic, because we're in a writing community here, and we can share these ideas and share our struggles, and we can all get better together. So I think this is great. Struggling with the topic, it's like you only got 5 jokes total. Not bad. Like most people can't write one joke a day. Right? You look at 90% of the comedians out there, they're not writing a joke a day. They're writing a joke every couple of weeks, maybe once a month, some guys, right? So it's like, and this one, Timo, you did get 3 decent jokes out of that. And the idea is, one reason I chose this joke, there were other ones I wanted to choose, but the one I chose before were like 2 women from Oklahoma were arrested for smuggling $2,600 worth of merchandise in the rolls of fat. That stimulates an image, and it's playful, and it gives us all this reason to, like, visceral, kind of makes us want to participate. I chose this one. Definitely had the recognition of Chipotle in there and robots replacing jobs, so it does have an emotional connection to an audience, but it's not as visceral. And I wanted to do that because when we learn to write for late night TV, one of the things we have to learn is to separate our emotions from the joke, because sometimes we're not going to feel anything about the joke or feel connected to it. I'm not sure if Timo is from a different, like maybe European or something, because there's a guy named Timo that's got my late night course, and I think he's European, right? So they might not know exactly what Chipotle is. They've heard of it, so they don't feel that connection. Now, as a comedian, a lot of times as a writer, you're going to encounter times when you have to write jokes about things you don't know about. Like one time I was told, my friend hired me to write some jokes about the LPGA and women in professional athletics. And I didn't know much about the the ladies PGA, right? Because I don't follow it. I barely follow golf at all, so I didn't know some of the names. So I had to go in and do some research, find some facts, and then write the jokes using mechanics, structure, and the laughter triggers. Knowing sometimes how the jokes work and what really makes the laugh makes it easier to write jokes from scratch on even subjects you don't know much about, and you build up those ideas. So I just wanted to share that with you. I'm glad you shared that, because a lot of people experience this, but it doesn't mean you can't write jokes. Just go to your mechanics. When you learn the mechanics, that's where you could really start to blossom and put things together. So thanks for sharing that, Timo. Good work. Chipotle is testing a robot that can make guacamole in half the time as a human employee. You will now get salmonella twice as fast. Nice, Gary. Very simple, to the point. Chipotle is still famous for that big E. coli outbreak and the salmonella, right? So in the food poisoning, so that is definitely on our minds. Would it be called E. coli or Wall-E coli, since it's a robot? Chipotle is testing a robot that can make guacamole in half the time as a human employee. Now, Ihab here did, and I like his last name. It's like Meet the Fockers. So in this case, what he did was he kind of wrote a script, and it's an interactive script. It's not all separate jokes. It's like, they replaced me with an avocado. Why'd that happen? Nothing last month. I told the manager I can't get a free daily meal. If I can get out, if I can get a free daily meal. And what did he say? He said he'll talk to the owner and the technical team, and they'll figure it out. Because basically he asked for a free employee meal, and he got fired and replaced with a robot. Avocado, employee of the century. Yes, employee of the century. That's funny. Yucky, I can't. Can I meet the chef? Yeah, he's in maintenance right now. Avocado, did you speak Spanish? I can speak any language. Angel, can you taste this for me? Sure, Avocado. Meet your new colleague, Avocado. Hello, Avocado. Hi, hello, people. Avocado, would you like some? Oh, I'll just take the battery. Take a battery. Oh, I don't like this guacamole. Is the chef okay? He just needs a new battery. Avocado, when are you leaving? Never. That's almost like a Space Odyssey 2000. Hal, open the door, Hal. I guess the IT team will move their office into the kitchen. Avocado, where do you live? Also here. Angel, can you help me change? Sure, Avocado. Here's the battery. Meaning help me change. We think we're going to change clothing, change the apron. They changed the battery. My name is Avocado. I'm a cook. You all know my father, AutoCAD. He's a famous designer. I wish I can be famous like my father. AutoCAD being the designing software for in computer software. So I like it. Most people don't know what AutoCAD is, but I like what you did with this. You just sort of like. You spilled out sort of a dialogue thing, and you got to some jokes that way. It's good writing. Writing begets writing. Put stuff down on the page. Eventually, it shapes into something. It's as Mark Twain said, "Here's how I write a book. I write the book and then get rid of chapter 1 because it takes chapter 1 for me to get warmed up." Chipotle is testing a robot that can make guacamole in half the time as a human employee. The robot is programmed with 3 rules: fresh produce, fast service, and most important, no unions. Nice. I like where you went with this, Andy. Chipotle is testing a robot that can make guacamole in half the time as a human employee. Robot guacamole comes with deep-fried silicon chips. Nice. Did the good job in the play on word on chips. Well done, just as Joseph did at the beginning. Chipotle is testing a robot that can make guacamole in half the time as a human employee. OSHA has expressed concerns about customers consuming a computer virus. So, hey, Chipotle did the E. coli virus. Next thing you know, it's just only one step to a computer virus. That may be one way to take it, do it as a compare and contrast. Plus, since we already know Chipotle had the E. coli virus spread like wildfire to like 13 states, and now it could be like, then we could do with the joke about the computer virus. Nice, well done. The robot has broken down twice. First time its circuits were jammed with avocado peel. The second time when it served Gordon Ramsay. That made me chuckle, just because Gordon Ramsay's name was dropped in there. The robot has offered free helpings to customers who bring in the prettiest laptops. That was funny. That's a funny idea, right? Free helpings to customers who bring in the prettiest laptops. So the Avocado is now, auto dating. Chipotle, or auto flirting, in other words. Chipotle is testing a robot that can make guacamole in half the time as a human employee. Yeah, and Mexican cartels are testing a robot that can kill local farmers in half the time so they can sell more avocados to Chipotle. Wasn't there something about that in the news? About cartels were actually trying to, pilfer and move in on avocado farming. I heard something about that. I think that's like, I don't know if it's fresh enough in the news for people to get that joke. Chipotle is testing a robot that can make guacamole in half the time as a human employee. Japan is laughing their asses off that this is newsworthy. Because Japan is like the country filled with robots. Chipotle is testing a robot that can make guacamole in half the time as a human employee. It's taking a while, though, because it's hard to sneak them across the border illegally. Not sure where that goes, and I don't think there's enough in there to make that work. They should test their employees' in English ability instead. Again, that's going to be probably tagged as racist. So you can't, that probably wouldn't be used for late night. Maybe if you were doing your stand-up and that was kind of your attitude, like a Nick DiPaolo type of guy, then that might play. But in this, and your name's Nick too. Maybe it is Nick DiPaolo, but he's going by Golubic, which is his That's like his Native American name for something, I don't know. But Nick he cranked out a bunch of these jokes, and he had 23 on the page. So I chose 4 in this case. So way to crank out the words. Just be careful of that. The stereotypes and the racially tinged jokes, because that will wind up getting your audience to pull back, especially if you're writing for a television show. All right, moving on to the next one. Let's go. Chipotle is testing a robot that can make guacamole in half the time as a human employee. Who doesn't love avocados? Because who doesn't love avocados? Yeah, it's like... Yeah, we get a robot to pump these things out. Chipotle is testing a robot that can make guacamole in half the time as a human employee, and cussing in Spanish because why is an expensive piece of equipment smushing up avocados? This robot could have been somebody. I'm not sure what you did there. It was getting kind of cute, but I lost a connection there. But it's I like when the you're adding sort of like this idea of the robot. It could have been so much better. It could have been so much more. And it's like, why is it just stuck smushing avocados? It could have been somebody, right? So Chipotle is testing a robot that can make guacamole in half the time as a human employee while mopping the floor and whistling "Working 9 to 5" by Dolly Parton. Nice, Paula. Chipotle is testing a robot that can make guacamole in half the time as a human employee. Chipotle is the repetitive motion of avocado mashing is causing stress factors in the robot's casing, though. So the robots are going out on strike to demand better healthcare coverage. Funny, I like it. Would it be healthcare or tech care? It's like Chipotle think it'd be replacing their healthcare plan with a tech care plan. I think you can get that at Best Buy. Chipotle is testing a robot that can make guacamole in half the time as a human employee. The thing is, the robot is assembled in China. Have you ever had Chinese guacamole? That's funny. You could put the technology, you could get the idea that the robot might be assembled in China, just like our iPhones. And it's like, but have you ever had a Chinese guacamole? I don't trust it. That could be a fun way to take it. Nice, Daphne. Chipotle is testing a robot that can make guacamole in half the time as a human employee. Let me test a robot that can make guacamole in half the time it takes for an avocado to go from ripe to rotten. Then they'll have something. That's a great joke. That definitely reminds me of like a Carlin joke. Carlin used to say, go to the universal truth of what the fact is. So in this case, the real savings, if you can find me a robot that can make guacamole in half the time it takes for an avocado to go from ripe to rotten, then they'll have something. Got it. Or even go from ripe to rotten is better, I think, than going from not ripe to ripe, right? I forgot what is the word, but not ripe to ripe. Like, because we wait 3 days, 4 days, sometimes for an avocado to ripen if we take it off the tree too soon. And it's like, in this case, I like ripe to rotten is funny. So then they'll have something. Nice work. Daphne, I almost said David Steinberg. Maybe she's an offspring of David Steinberg. Chipotle is testing a robot that can make guacamole in half the time as a human employee. Chipotle is, mathematically speaking, that doubles the amount of customers who get diarrhea. Funny, Henning. Nice. I like that. Henning is from, I think Henning's from Germany, as I believe, right? Chipotle is testing a robot that can make guacamole in half the time as human employee. They're also testing a robot that can make tortilla chips, which is pretty innovative. Now they just need a robot that can that signs all the terminations. I like it. I like where you're going with this, right? If we introduce replacing human employees, right? And it's like, now he's like, we make tortilla chips. Now they make, now making guacamole, making tortilla chips. All we need is somebody to sign all those employee terminations. The employee pink slips, they might call it here in the States. All right, nice work, Henning. Chipotle is testing a robot that can make guacamole in half the time as a human employee. Not to be outdone, Arby's has started testing a new burger that can be made with half an employee. I like that. Soylent Green, a joke right there, right? It's not so nice and good. Another pivot joke. So one of the good things about watching these jokes flow, right? Being in a writer's room and hearing all the jokes that are being thrown out by writers is you get to hear different approaches that you now can use in future jokes, like these pivots. We've heard 3 or 4 pivots so far to another brand, and it's really effective. And plus, it gives us a whole nother image to work with. Arby's. How many people saw the branding image of Arby's, their logo, when he said that when that joke was said out loud? So good work there, Chris. And guess what? They're also remodeling the restaurant so you can get to the toilet in half the time. Good. Right? The good, faster access to the toilet. Swinging doors, in other words. Chipotle is testing a robot that can make guacamole in half the time as a human employee. Yes, a robot can make guacamole faster than a human. Guacamole will contain low sodium, but be high in acid. Yes, a robot can make guacamole faster than a human if it uses RI and not AI. RI is real ignorance. I see what you're doing there, Glenn. Tweak it a little bit. But I didn't quite get high in acid. What's the acid? Where's that coming from? Is that some sort of reference we don't know? Is like a silicon chip acidic? I'm not sure where you're going with that. But Good work putting it down on the page. Chipotle is testing a robot that can make guacamole in half the time as a human employee. It can make a human employee in an hour, so that's pretty good. Another one who went right to the simple truth. Loved it. Good work. That was the Chipotle is testing a robot that can make guacamole in half the time as a human employee. That was easy. Now they're trying to get a robot to train white people to say Chipotle. Funny. Train white people to say Chipotle. Very funny. Chipotle is testing a robot that can make guacamole in half the time as a human employee. Elon Musk has bought Chipotle. He's going to name it X, probably for the best. Finally, something white people can pronounce. Funny. Good. More on that pronunciation struggle with the white people. Chipotle is testing a robot that can make guacamole in half the time as a human employee. The robot has a clear edge working for Chipotle, already being inherently familiar with heavy processing. Nice. Now, Chipotle is known for their fresh foods, but still, heavy processing is a fun joke. Maybe you could do a pivot here, like McDonald's is known for their heavy processing. What Impossible Burgers are known for their heavy processing. So maybe there's a pivot there where we can go with something with heavy processing. And not only is robot learning, not only is the robot learning to make guacamole in half the time, it's already mastered making half the portions customers ask for. Sounds like that's something that a robot would do. It's just like definitely something they do with once they get involved in the measuring everything. All of a sudden, you get really lousy cocktails at a bar that goes corporate. Chipotle is testing a robot that can make guacamole in half the time as a human employee. Another well-received perk of the robot is that it offers complimentary chips. Good, going with that, Oivy. Good work there. Chipotle is testing a robot that can make guacamole in half the time as a human employee. If they don't stop the robot might quit. Good thing robots don't have feelings, or it might quit. So I see what the play you're doing there. I don't know. This just dropped. I just kind of copied and pasted, so it might have more than 3, obviously. If they don't stop the robots might push back and make it double time, or call human resources or IT. Paired with rice and beans, they're calling this burrito the singularity. I like the singularity there. Because that is basically based on the theory of relativity from Einstein, talking about a black hole. Everything dies in a black hole, the singularity. So, but I don't think a lot of people can get that if that's the sort of association you were going for. Not only do they make great burritos, Chipotle makes a great AI sentient. Makes AI sentient. Got it. Makes AI sentient, like a human. So who knew that fast food could ignite the singularity? Another singularity joke. No one predicted that guacamole guacamole making has sentient properties, and guacamole is high in calories and sentient. I would go with that last one. I think this one's good down here. Guacamole is high in calories and the robot chose the right thing because guacamole is high in calories, good fat, and sentient properties. So nice work with Denise. Chipotle is testing a robot that can make. I think Denise wrote a bunch of other jokes too, didn't you, Denise? I'm not sure. I don't remember. So many. Look at all the people participating here. You think my brain would have exploded by repeating this setup again over and over and over, right? But it's like so much fun. It's like, so you guys are really cranking. I'm so impressed. Chipotle is testing a robot that can make guacamole in half the time as a human employee. Meanwhile, Taco Bell is testing a robot that can cause diarrhea in half the time as a human employee. Good pivot. Another pivot there. You guys are probably starting to recognize this now and seeing how that device is that can be worked, right? So once you have Chipotle, you can go through and look at all other brands that are known for fast food, and then sort of see what kind of tweak you can pivot to. Chipotle is testing a robot that can make guacamole in half the time as a human employee. Luckily for Chipotle, the robot is married, so he's used to being tested. Testing his temperament, maybe. Chipotle is testing a robot that can make guacamole in half the time. Yeah, he's used to being tested, but still doesn't listen because he's married, right? You don't listen. Chipotle is testing a robot that can make guacamole in half the time as a human employee. Chipotle will put the robots in stores as soon as they can be taught to say, guacamole costs extra. Nice, lol. Chipotle is testing a robot that can make guacamole in half the time as a human employee. A machine that can get a job done faster than a human. I'm very familiar with that. I've seen seen what's in my wife's nightstand drawer. I like it. That's a vibrator joke. Chipotle is testing a robot that can make guacamole in half the time as a human employee. Also, you don't have to worry about robot getting moody and quitting all of a sudden. That's what my former boss would say. Good. Good thing I'm not one writing the headlines. I'd mention how you can swear at a robot if it screws up, not worry about getting fired or sued. Good, Keegan. I like that. Nice direction to go there with that. You could like yell at him, yell at the robot, and nobody gets, and the robot doesn't sue you. Chipotle is testing a robot that can make guacamole in half the time as a human employee. Chipotle is testing the robot has two arms. One makes the guacamole 1/10 the time it takes the human, and the other uses the other arm. The other arm uses a squeegee to get it off the walls into a bowl. Squeeze, right? Is that what that gag is? That's a funny visual, and it'd be fun to see in a sketch. Chipotle is testing a robot that can make guacamole in half the time as a human employee. They expected that the robot's AI would help learn it to go even faster, but after a few weeks, the overall performance of the robots and humans evened out. AI learned to ask for paid breaks because AI learned to ask. That's like AI is intelligent learning, right? It learns as it goes. It's like next thing you know, the AI is asking for paid breaks. That's funny. Chipotle is testing a robot that can make guacamole in half the time as a human employee. Elon Musk bought 20 of them and is planning to host a take-a-dip avocado pool party. Nice work, Steve. Chipotle is testing a robot that can make guacamole in half the time as a human employee. When told, it probably wasn't a good idea for Chipotle. Probably wasn't a good idea. Chipotle doubled down on their efforts. I always thought they were a half-assed restaurant. They were now now they're down an employee, so it takes twice as long to get it. So yeah, replace an employee. Now you're down an employee. Hey, we can replace that server. Wait, server. New jingle to the tune of Jackson's Dancing Machine. It's like let's see, Dancing Machine. It makes me think of Dancing Queen. It's like he's a dancing machine, right? That one, new jingle. It's a quack, guacamole, dancing machine. Got it. Guacamole machine. I got it, Marshall. Nice work there. It's like a good and fun and real creative to think of a song parody to plug into this. Song parodies are really great dynamic shifts because they're also 3D or maybe even 4D because then you add performance to it plus music. It really gives it a nice texture. Good, really creative to think of doing that. Chipotle is testing a robot that will make guacamole in half the time as a human employee. The Chipotle robot makes guacamole. It's like I would call it the Gallagher, but that's probably too obscure for most people. Kevin, yes, I got it. It's like it's like what's maybe even play it that way. Testing a robot that makes guacamole in half the time. I knew a guy who could turn watermelons into into smoothies with a sledgehammer. They called that robot Gallagher. Something like that would be a good tie-in. I see where you're going with that. Nice, Kevin. Then it's a great visual too. You can see that squish all over the place, and it's like the Gallagher with the sledgehammer. Chipotle is testing a robot that can make guacamole in half the time as a human employee. Chipotle hires humans. Nice, doing the play on the human. Joke 2, great idea. Let's get a robot to do it because it doesn't know how to make it taste good either. But at least we save money on labor. Chipotle is testing a robot that can make guacamole in half the time as a human employee. I don't know that Chipotle's problems can be answered by staffing the counter with even more robots. Funny, John, that's basically saying, the staff is robotic enough. It's like, why not add one more? Maybe just say it that way. You see how we just sometimes, what are you trying to say with that joke? Say it. Here's like Chipotle is testing a robot that can make guacamole in half the time as a human employee. It's like, it's like, hey, because the staff is already robotic, why not just add one more? That one might be one way to really say it concisely. Got it? Good work. Good ideas on that one. It's a whole different angle than some of the other jokes that were there, but that's that really does answer a question. Chipotle is testing a robot that, wait a second, it's Bob Kirk. I think I say Bob for last in this, didn't I? So if I did, this would be a drum roll, please. Chipotle is testing a robot that can make guacamole in half the time as a human employee. Of course, they haven't been using robot long enough to experience robot rage. Like, what's the employee rage? What's that? Disgruntled is maybe the term, Bob. Like they haven't been using robots long enough. Just wait till they experience a disgruntled robot. What would they bring in? Disgruntled robots used to go in and shoot up the post office, right? They would go postal. What would they call it? So as yet, no customer has been sexually assaulted by the robot. Give it time and a couple of cervezas. Chipotle is testing a robot that can make guacamole in half the time as a human employee, and the employees were trying to get a union until they wait till they see what the robots do to get. Wait till they see they were worried about the employees trying to get a union. Wait till they see what the robots do to get unionized. That's a good joke, Bob. I like that. Nice compare and contrast. Meaning employees really are not that bad. Wait till you see what the robots do to get unionized. And there, I would use a drop in of the Terminator. That would be a good image to drop in there. All right. So let me go to my jokes. Where did some of my jokes I just cranked out here? Let's say, let me share this tab right here. So I just did. Since I was prepping for this the storm that's supposed to be coming, we'll see if it gets here. I was just I was pressed for time. So Chipotle is testing a robot that can make guacamole in half the time as a human employee, and so I do the listing here, and I did more listing with artificial intelligence, and my lists go pretty deep here. And so after I make the lists, now that's one of the things when if you're stuck writing the jokes, just break it down to its elements and make lists. People, places, things, words, phrases, cliches, events, dealing with guacamole, robots, Chipotle, human employees, those main elements in that setup. Then in that you can find a lot of stuff to work with. So I just put I just put everything I came up with, just popped it on the page. I didn't sort through it and tweak, so you're getting to see the good and the bad. So now Chipotle doesn't give you diarrhea; it just gives you a 404 error. That's a computer joke. So another version of that would be, so now if they run out of guacamole, they just give you a 404 error, a different way of approaching that. Good news is now you no longer get E. coli, you get Wall-E coli. A dumb pun, but it was still fun to do. In related news, there was the joke being Chipotle is testing a robot that can make guacamole in half the time as a human employee. In related news, there's another outbreak of E. coli. Chipotle just called it C3PO. Sorry, I had to do that. This good news is Chipotle can now make guacamole in half the time. The bad news is that it's only served with computer chips. That was the one that was that reminded me of Joe's joke right there. He said microchips, and that was I put computer chips. Chipotle is testing a robot that can make guacamole in half the time as a human employee. In related news, Chipotle is now offering free computer chips and salsa. Chipotle is now testing a robot that can make guacamole in half the time as a human employee. The computer-based robot is part of their healthy menu approach, because you know what they say. And here I put that computer-based robot, and in healthy menu, you know what they say, an apple a day. Referring to the Apple computer. Chipotle is testing a robot that can make guacamole in half the time as a human employee. They have robots that make human employees. Again, using that simple truth joke that a couple of you saw in that headline. I was very impressed that you guys nailed that simple truth line, because a lot of people miss that when it's right there in the puzzle. Chipotle is testing a robot that can make guacamole in half the time as a human employee, because there's nothing like guacamole with silicon salsa. Chipotle is testing a robot that can make guacamole in half the time as a human employee. Bad news is early tests, the robot was overheating. The good news is Chipotle is now serving avocado toast. Chipotle is testing a robot that make guacamole in half the time as a human employee. Your food is brought to you by a different kind of server. Chipotle is testing a robot that can make guacamole in half the time as a human employee. Appetizers are now apps, and side dishes are called peripherals. So that's those are some of the jokes I came up with that. Guys, I am so impressed with what you did. Of course, as you guys know, that this is part of my sort of an awareness thing for the late night course I do that I teach, and it's it's an online course, and it takes all the years I had an experience of writing for late night TV, and I put that in the course itself. So it's a lot of people don't know that there are 9 psychological laughter triggers, and you'll get the PDF on those, and plus the 12 major comedy structures. That's going to go out to the email to the people that are on that signed up to do this particular challenge, and then. So it's you have a lot of hosts. Now, look at what changes we've had. Corden's gone, and so is, oh my gosh, how did I forget her name? she was over on the Peacock Network, one of the head writers for Seth Meyers. Really funny lady, but it just wasn't working over there in that show. So we've consolidated to we got Mar, we got Seth Meyers, we got Jimmy Kimmel, we got John Oliver, we got Stephen Colbert, and we got Jimmy Fallon still on the air. Still a whole like 8 times the amount of guys that were on the air when I first started. So, but there's opportunities, sketches that they do over there on Fallon. So in the program, I teach desk pieces, sketches, and sort of using text-based jokes and image-based jokes. So you're learning the 5 elements of story and how story affects you writing sketches and affects the joke. So moving forward, so in the course, we teach the monologue jokes, the desk pieces, the sketches, the remotes, the cold opens, the audience pieces, the cold closes, and then what I like about the course is it helps you to prepare a writer's packet to get a job in late night TV and writing for late night TV. It's good to have a packet. You need a packet that shows what you do. And a packet is usually a page and a half of monologue jokes, a couple of desk pieces, and a couple of sketches, right? So, but each show has its own sort of specifications for what it would like you to submit. Now, why would you want to joke in late night TV? Because it's a job that changed my life, right? I went from comedian, trying to get gigs, doing one-nighters, doing some clubs, bouncing around the place, got this late night job. And in the late night job, you work every week, you're working 5 days a week, and the pay is really good. Right now, of course, there's no pay because we're on strike, right? The WGA is on strike. But prior to the strike, the contract was somewhere around $4,000 a week, minimum base pay, meaning that you could work there for an entire week and get paid $4,000, whether or not you produce a joke that gets on the air. That's Anthony Jeselnik was on the Tonight Show for an entire year, never got a joke greenlit, but he was still making $4,000 a week. And if you write a sketch that's 2 minutes and that gets greenlit, you're making up to $4,000 on the sketch. So, and if you write a song parody, as we saw earlier, I think was that Keegan who wrote? Somebody wrote the song parody, and it's like if you wrote a song parody that got on the air, you get paid for that as well. So there's layers that you can get paid when you're writing for late night TV. It can turn into a very lucrative job. And so having that gig was a life changer. And so the class, even if you're not going for late night, if you're a comedian, writing for late night TV every day, cranking out jokes. Most writers were cranking out 25 to 40 jokes. I was cranking out somewhere around 80 to 120 jokes a day. And that's only not to brag. It was just what my mentors taught me to do because that's what these old guys were doing. I was like, if these old guys can do it, I could do it. So, but from that, my stand-up got better. My writing for other people got better and improved. I could write jokes pretty much on anything that showed up because of the writing every day like that and creating lists. It just made me a better writing. Now I can punch up speeches. Now I give I work with corporate CEOs and helping them to produce speeches that are humorous so it really helps comedy writers, comedians, commercial copywriters. If you're writing commercials, screen and sitcom writers, YouTube creators, sketch writers, Toastmasters, presenters, and anyone interested in developing their skill set in writing comedy. So so my course, what's interesting is the Breaking Comedy's DNA. Emerson College, Columbia University, UNLV, USC now offer a Bachelor's of Arts in Comedic Arts. Can you believe it? They're teaching a comedic art. You can get a degree in comedic arts now. And it's like Emerson's, you're going to pay about $42,000 a year, same as Columbia. UNLV, maybe a little less. USC's private, so it's right about, you'll hit 48 per year, 48,000 per year. So about 168,000 for a 4-year program. And it's like my course, $997. Here's the catch. These guys use Breaking Comedy's DNA as their core text when they were building their program in comedic arts. So that's a little secret there. They're charging you $38K, $42K. So in my course, $997. We also have a payment program. And for this particular thing, first 10 people to roll $200 off. So that being said, it's just there. You don't have to join. You don't have to take it. I don't want this to be a heavy pitch. I want to do more of these events. These are fun. These bring the community together. If you want to take a course and really improve your writing game, I don't think there's anything like that late night course anywhere else on the internet. You can't get it, that type of course. It's all online. And plus, we have a Facebook group we join up. We get together on and bang around some ideas, sort of like we're doing today in this sort of challenge. Just wanted to put that out there. And I'm gonna send you an email with the link so you can check out the course if you want. Again, you don't have to. It's just, of course, it's no obligation. But I just wanted to just give you that as an option to up your game, to become to maybe take it to the next level, to become a pro at it. Like one of the things that sold me on it way back in the day was when Johnny Carson said, I saw Johnny Carson at a tennis tournament with John McEnroe, and there was Johnny Carson standing right there. I was like, oh my God, Johnny Carson. And I said, I always wanted to get into comedy and write comedy. What would you say as advice? And one of the things he said, he says, if you can write funny consistently, you'll always work. The amount of money you make will vary, but you'll always work, because very few people out there can write funny consistently. So if you're going to do it, find somebody to coach you, find somebody to teach you. There are some great writers out there who would do that. And I found two of the best in the business, Gene Parrott and Bob Mills, who were both writers for Bob Hope and the Dean Martin Roasts and a lot of the other shows on TV. So they taught me to write, and I was able to now take that and then apply that and get a job on The Tonight Show. And that changed everything. No more waiting in line at the clubs. He was a writer for The Tonight Show. You want stage time? Yeah, you got it. So it's just something to help you amp up your game and stay accountable. Just thought I made that suggestion there. Guys, this was a lot of fun. And I hope you guys enjoyed it as much as I do. I did, because I thought it was just a blast. So let me just stop sharing and get on here with y'all. And I just was blown away. Steve, did I skip your joke? How did I skip your joke? Can you put it in the chat if I skipped your joke? Yeah, I'm doing some tomorrow. Make sure I get it. I'll be doing. You said it at 8:30 this morning. I must have missed it, Steve. Sorry about that. I thought I put up all the jokes that came in the email. And I'll be doing avocados again. That's funny. I'll be doing another one tomorrow at 1 p.m. If the storm doesn't take the house away, which I don't think it will. It's like, I've lived through hurricanes on the East Coast, so this is going to come in as a tropical storm and break up. So tomorrow I'll be doing this again at 1 p.m. So if you want to join for that, if you have some new jokes, send them in the email again, and we'll go through some more. Yeah. So Steve, I'm sorry I missed it unless you drop it into the chat right now. But I'll be doing this again tomorrow. So I'll double check and see where I missed your joke, Steve. So we had a huge turnout. I really like this. The participation in this was fantastic. So I hope you enjoyed it. I'm going to check out now, and I look forward to all natural ingredients with artificial intelligence. Mike, great to see you, Frankovich. By the way, Mike Frankovich there gets a great Rodney Dangerfield impression. And it's like, and that's a great paradox. All natural ingredients with artificial intelligence. Good job, everyone. Really, really impressed with how much you came out with this. And so Images would have enhanced all of these jokes. Yes. Yeah, Crazed Haven. That's right. Crazed follows me on Twitter, and we have a lot of conversations. He's so into comedy and can go deep on it. Images, absolutely. When you're writing jokes, and I'm glad you put that down there, because in the comments, when you're writing jokes, and this is great advice for everybody, especially for late night TV, things have changed from 20 years ago, right, 30 years ago, in that there's so much more imagery being used. It's one of the things that I talked about back in the day was like, we should use more imagery. And I kept getting, if it's don't broke, don't fix it, sort of thing. And it was like, but if we can put up an image there, it will really enhance, because we have the technology to pop an image in there, a photo, cut to a video, something that makes it more appealing. Because think about the medium. The medium's television. Television's a visual medium. Why on earth wouldn't you put more visual concepts in there when you're doing jokes? So when you're writing jokes, the jokes that really play well are the ones with clear imagery. And if we can assign a photo a drop in, what they call an over the shoulder, or a full graphic that comes in, you've seen the differences, or even a video sketch, a mini sketch that can play as part of a monologue joke. If you can think visually, Those are the things that really grab laughter. Now, so Teddy B put in there Chipotle testing a robot that can make guacamole in half the time as a human employee. Next thing you know, R2D2 will be taking your order. Beep beep. Beep. If you can do that, if I can whistle right now, I want to whistle. And it's like, would you like? Does that mean brown rice or white rice? And it's like, then the next thing you know, you get that diarrhea, and you're like, help me, Obi-Wan. You're my only hope. That's funny. I like where you went with that, Teddy B. Good. So it's like, so anyway, we're gonna check out here for now. If you want to join tomorrow again at 1 p.m., I'll be putting that up on the right on the channel. You'll see that. So I'd love to see you guys tomorrow. And I look forward to doing some more of these with y'all. And take care. Have a great weekend. And those people that are in the path of Hillary, right? It's like the way it's going to be just like a presidential campaign. It started out with a bang and then fizzled out in the time we needed it the most. All right, you guys, we'll see you again. Have a great weekend. Goodbye.